Welcome to another episode of the CDW Life Nuggets podcast with Pastor Cher D. Wigley, where the Word of God is the foundational truth that we believe and live. It's life for our spiritual and practical application. Tune in, hear the Word, and prepare to be empowered to manifest and maximize life. And now a message from Pastor Cher D. Wigley.
Hello there, and thank you so much for joining CDW Life Nuggets podcast. I pray that you are having a wonderful day, and I thank you so much for tuning in to our podcast this week as we talk about living the gospel you sing about. I know that the podcasts that you've previously heard prior to today have been a major blessing for your life, and I know that this particular one will be no different. I'm looking forward to the time that we share with the guests that we have on. I thank God for his presence, and I thank God for all of you that are faithful listeners and partners with the podcast. Before we begin, I'd like for you to do two things for me. Number one, listen intently and be prayerful about what it is that you hear. And then secondly, take a moment to share the podcast with someone that you're connected with so that others may be blessed by what it is that we're going to receive today as we listen to this man of God, this artist, this psalmist, this musician that God has just blessed us and allowed us to have the opportunity to share with. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Leon Timbo. To all of you that are listening, he is an amazing vocalist, and I absolutely love his worship, his music, his voice, and more so his heart that you can feel as he sings and ministers and worships. And so, Leon, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate your presence.
Thank you, Cher. Thank you, Pastor Cher. Which one should I call you on the podcast?
Either is okay. It's okay.
Yeah, cool. Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you. As we stated, this week we're talking about living the gospel we sing about. And, I think that it's really important that our listeners and people know that, number one, people that are in positions and have platforms and have major audiences and travel and whatever those those requirements are, whether you be a gospel artist or a minister or however it may be, that even in that you're still a human being and there's still life wins and woes that you have to go through and experience. And it's important to have something foundationally that can sustain you as you're doing what it is that God has called you to do. And so I really want to spend time talking about what that looks like, what your life song is, what that looks like for you, and how you've been able to sustain and maintain. So to start, how long have you been singing and been in the industry?
Well, I think it's important to know I'm a PK, preacher's kid, pastor's kid. My
wow,
father,
I am too.
My father passed away a couple of years ago, and that impacted my life greatly. So that kind of precedes my answering the question. I've been doing this since I was 16, 17, so that'll be 20-something years, right? And I didn't, ordinarily sing. I grew up Kojic, Sunshine Band, all that stuff. But I did not grow up singing until I prayed and asked God. I wanted to sing. I wanted to sound like Marvin Winans. Wanted to sound a little like John P. Key.
Right.
And and I remember sitting in that bathroom as long as my little teenage body would let me. And then I joined my high school chorus, and I started listening and hearing differently. At first, I would hear songs and couldn't sing them back out loud, but I started doing that. And God started just kind of opening my ear. And so about 20 years.
Wow. I think that's, first of all, it's cute as a kid because I could just even, I remember having moments where, there are people, like I said, that I look to that I'm like, I want to be able to have a sound word like this person, or I want to be powerful and effective like that person, or not just in preaching, but in singing too. So I completely understand. It brought back memories listening to you say that you prayed that same prayer. But truly, God has blessed you in terms of answering your prayer, and just the sound that you exude when you are in worship. It to me, and I may have shared this with you before, but it to me just transcends. I love your worship, and it transcends just hearing music or just hearing you play an instrument. You can really hear the passion that you have behind who God is and behind your relationship with Christ. So, what would you say? Is your driving passion? When you are in those moments of writing or doing instrumentation or playing, or even those moments of visible and public worship. What is your driving passion for those moments?
Honestly, I've come to understand my driving passion. I give a list of motivators. Um, One would have to be love.
That's good.
And the interesting thing is one doesn't mean to, but you don't really see one unless you bring two into perspective. And number
Yeah.
two is pain. Number two is pain.
Wow.
Number two is walking with God and having your mind want, desire, see, whatever, and then um, submitting that, surrendering that, um,
Mhm.
processing that loss, processing what you felt like you should have gotten, what you felt like you should have done or been,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
I really found a passion in love, right? Number one,
Mhm.
but through pain, and the closer I got to see God's lens of pain,
Mhm.
God's lens of suffering, quote unquote, the more I understood His love, and the more
Yeah.
I was I was then passionate about it. So
Wow.
what a lot of people may see in me. I remember when I picked up the guitar, there was no one playing the guitar,
Mhm.
around me. I would have to look back at Bill Withers and James Taylor and those
Mhm.
guys. I mean, I loved Andre Crouch and I loved the Hawkins and I loved gospel music in my core, right? But in
Mhm.
terms of picking up the guitar, that really didn't exist, and the reason for it was pretty functional. I needed something to go out in the backyard and engage into this space and process of pain with. And the guitar
Right.
was the movable tool, for me.
Mhm.
And with that, I was able to kind of articulate a love song. And the desperation of needing God in my moment kind of started there because I knew
Mhm.
all of my limitations. I knew when this thing started. I knew what it felt like to not have it, and my desperation of wanting God to always smile on it was important to me.
Wow, that is so. I hope you all that are listening, that you just received that there has to be a balance between love and pain, and I think that as you stated, sometimes we don't really learn from our hurt because we sit in it so long, or because it's in us. We carry it so long, and we don't, as you mentioned, we don't know how to properly process it for it to lead us to the love of God. So I think that's so profound. What you just said, and identifying those two things as your driving passion, just in lieu of your passion. What would you say has been most important for you? Those disciplines and routines to maintain that foundation. There are a lot of things that are around us in the church world, if we be honest, church world, gospel industry, music industry
Mhm.
at large, it's social media, just every aspect where there is a plethora of people in a larger community. And so there are a lot of opinions and a lot of things that we try to keep up with, and a lot keeping up with accolades from other people and trying to stay abreast of all of what's going on around us. What are those spiritual disciplines and routines that you maintain personally, or that you hold dear and deem important, so that you can maintain who you are throughout all of what's going on around you?
The interesting thing is, man, I'm gonna back up a little, and I'm gonna
Okay.
tag the last statement about pain. The Pain, I've discovered, is our friend. Pain is not
Wow.
our
Can you say that again for those that are
pain.
listening?
Pain is our friend, and I give you proof. And this aligns to my answer to your question in terms of my walk, and how the tensions of the industry, both gospel secular, kind of build in my walk. Pain is our friend, and I speak of this often because when my father passed, I was able to dig into James, the half brother of Jesus, and Psalms 88. Psalms 88 is the only psalm. We're so used to David kind of, talking about his enemies and talking about how crazy life is. And then at the end, he kind of jumps out and identifies God's victory and identifies kind of the answer, or the direction of the answer, or, the focus of the answer. Psalm 88 is much different. In fact, Psalm 88 ends with the word darkness, and then a couple of words later, there's a period. And that speaks to me. It spoke to me when my father passed, but it speaks to me every day, because it doesn't show me an Abba, a father, a God who is so quick to answer. He is more interested in me acknowledging his presence, not in the solution of the issue, but acknowledging his presence in the issue, period. The fact that he's not defined by my fear or my anger or my frustration, and I'm not defined by my state of being in that place, but he's God enough to make himself small enough to sit in my anguish with me. And that delivers me, because it doesn't push me to an end. It doesn't push me to a solution. It doesn't necessarily push me to getting better. It pushes me to become more aware of him and his lens over my life and over that situation, which in turn gives me guidance in this journey itself, So, and that goes to James. When James, the brother of Jesus, he chooses to write really, a few chapters, and this chapter jumps out. I, James, a slave of the Master Jesus, speaking to the tribes scattered, kingdom come. I read out the Message Bible. I memorized it. And then he says, consider it a sheer gift when trials. Consider it and I say it this way: consider it a Christmas present when trials come at you from all sides. So James is saying, when those things come for you, it is a blessing to you, because now you're able to differentiate between your faith life, what is and what isn't your present state of mind, and how connected you are to God's lens over your situation, which is our ultimate goal here in life. Our ultimate pursuit is to be heaven on earth. Well, our capacity to maintain that, our ability to carry that weight, is influenced by the level of processing pain that we're able to process through. And that truth is something that I've had to come into knowledge of, right? I grew up with people saying, get over your problems. Jesus is the victory. He'll get you through it. Get over and get past it. But James says, sit in it. James says, sit there until you know why you're there, until you see there the way I see there. And then become. It's like I got a couple of weights around here, and as I lift weights, my muscles literally tear to then build resistance to then carry the next weight. But at that tearing, if I didn't have a God lens over that tearing, I would consider that destruction. I would consider that my problem. I would consider that my enemy. But with a God lens of love, I'm able to identify that space as his provision and his grace in me realizing how much he loves me. So that's kind of my journey.
That's so good. For some people who are listening and who have heard that, and they're saying to themselves, but you don't understand the depth of my pain. You don't understand how heavy it is. You don't know how hard it is to keep a smile on my face and, do what I do in church and be who everybody needs me to be. And I feel heavy and I feel weighted and I'm not true to the authenticity of what's going on the inside. What are some of the practical things that you can encourage our listeners to do to process that? Because I think that sometimes we don't process things because we don't know how, and then we run to what keeps us stuck in it. It's a difference between sitting in it and, working through it and being stuck. And because we don't know how to process it, we become stuck in it and we run to other things that serve as just like a blanket or serve as a temporary fix or, other people, other relationships, other outlets that cause that pain to become, it festers and turns into something else, and it gets bigger and it gets worse. So what are some practical things that you can share with our listeners as to how to process that pain so that they can see beyond that and really embrace God's love?
I think we have to have what my nana used to call a come to Jesus meeting. And we have to begin it with a choice.
Yeah.
And once we choose to hear God over a situation, once we choose that, then the next step, honestly, this is not something I've learned growing up. It's something I've come to later understand. The Book of Lamentations is legitimate and necessary. There's a reason for lamenting. There's a reason for sitting in that space and admitting the honesty of your present state. And there is a release in either saying that in prayer, saying that to a person, even saying that to a counselor. But there's something in confessing that and getting it out of your system as many times as you need to. I think we miss the beauty of our resurrection weekend because we don't give ourselves an authentic opportunity to lament the Lord's suffering. There's something about sitting in the space. We turn Good Friday into Sunday on Friday, and we talk about the resurrection on Friday and Sunday, but there's something about sitting in the place of his suffering, sitting in the place of his tension of saying, I'll do this, but if there's any possible way this cup cannot be mine, to sit in the anguish of that choice, because that's indeed the choice that we have to make ourselves, but sitting in the anguish of that choice and walking ourselves through the process of letting it go. It's not easy. I'll never say that it's easy, but I will say this authentic process of healing, number one, creates an altar of worship because truth precedes worship. Transparency precedes worship. And that's what John 4 is all about. It's about stating that space, stating where you are, and then stating what heaven is. But if you never offer yourself as a sacrifice, heaven can never consume what you didn't offer. And so that space is necessary. So practically, there's a healthy way to lament your process. There's a healthy way to grieve your process. Anybody that feels like you need to jump into victory, they don't understand, and there's a lot they have to deal with in their lives. So I found a safe space in giving God the honesty of my heart. And if I hated it, my theology won't let me hate him. I ain't crazy enough to hate God and be mad at God. I'm just, no, that's not smart. But I can say that I hate where I am, and I don't feel like you're with me, and I don't feel like you hear me, and I don't feel like you placed the right people around me, and I don't feel like I've had help for this many years, and I don't, and in the honesty of that space, he sits in there with me, and through that, some miraculous thing happens in that healing. That's what this coronavirus pandemic is presenting to us. It's giving all of us an authentic opportunity to lament what we're losing so that we can see the essentials of our lives and see what's essential and what's not essential. I mean, how many times did we consider breathing before this thing? How many times did we consider the necessity
Right.
of you? I am over talking. I'm sorry.
No. That's what this is for.
How many times have we considered the one thing that this virus addresses before it came to being? And I believe that in this process, even for churches, can I be honest, being a PK, and us PKs, we're
Right.
on one hand submitted because we had to get saved 20 times for it to be real. And on the other hand, we have to fight being cynics because we know the pain and the process that my father had to do, and that built up in me some other stuff that's hard to get over. But my point in saying that is this: I feel like even for our pastors are having to learn the rhythm of rest and the rhythm of letting the Lord build His church, which has not necessarily been something in their hands for a long time.
Absolutely.
And so even us as pastors, we're finding ourselves in the tension of that space. And God's love is just there because before we had a title, before we had people, we had Him, and we had His love. And I think that's what this is about. So, yeah, that's been my process. I know it's a long answer, but that's been my process.
No. It's so much to grab out of what you said, and just to piggyback on the latter portion of what you said, that we have to get back to the place where we recognize and where we have gotten off, or where we have strayed away, or where we have not really depended on God, be able to be honest and transparent and return to that place. And it's so funny that you brought that up, because I was just telling some of our church the other day about how important it is to be transparent, to have those prayers of confession. And confession, when we hear that word, we think about, oh, I've done something wrong, or, I'm about to be condemned when you hear the word confession. But confession really just means agreeing with God that I am being transparent and being honest about where I am, and I have been hurt, and I have been scorned, and I have, this is too heavy for me, and I don't have the answer, so that God can then transform, and He can convert whatever those situations are, and you in it. And you can see things differently and be healed and be restored and be empowered and become more like Him. But if we're never, as you just stated, honest with ourselves to say, yes, this is how I feel. This is where I am. I don't desire to be here. I don't know how to get over it. I don't know what I need to do, but I'm depending on You. But my eyes are on You. If we never get around to saying those things, we will never be in a position where we can embrace the love of God the way He has extended it to us. So that was so good. I know you feel like it was long, but listen, every bit of it was necessary. And it was so good to hear. So just with you being in the industry and all of those changes, and just in lieu of, because a lot of times people don't understand your private moments and those personal scars and those what I'll deem or call a tug of war, in terms of you really just releasing yourself before God and humbling yourself and reducing yourself down to a child in the presence of our Father. Those private moments are generally the ones that shape what we see. They are, those private moments are what we see. They're what shapes the passion of the preacher. That's what shapes the passion of the worship leader. That's what shapes the passion of, the gospel artist. And sometimes the lack thereof, where you don't have that intimacy with God as our Father, when you don't have those moments, and when you're not spending time in prayer, and when you're not, as you stated, processing, with God, you can tell when you get out in the public that this is a performance and it's not a relationship of God's presence. And so what would you encourage our listeners to do to build that private time? Because, I'll be honest, I think that, and probably maybe this was 10 or 15 years ago, and maybe we didn't realize it because we didn't see it for what it was. But I think that social media has created, and I say this often, it's created this desire to want to be something in somebody else's eyes and not really caring about who we are in God's eyes. And there's this intent of I've got to become, I've got to show, somebody who I am, what I can do, what I have, etc., so that we can get the accolades of men. Meanwhile, God is in the corner, asking us, well, when are you going to seek my attention? So, what would you share with our listeners in terms of how important that private time is to you, and how they need to make it important to them, shifting their eyes and their hearts, because you can't live something that you don't experience. So when we talk about living the gospel, you sing about, if you don't experience it aside from when you deliver it, then there's no such thing as living. So how can you, what are some things that you would share with our listeners to develop those private moments?
I pray as I say these things that they bring a realization of some truths.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the truths is that Eleanor Roosevelt, I believe it was, she said, "You will be amazed at how little people think about you." And the statement was made in the context of we make such effort to perform that we forget to become. And the becoming comes when you are able to properly see that people don't care as much as you think they care. And maybe this is part of the cynic in me and the truth of me, as well. I'm gonna be transparent, and I may push some tensions here, but again, being a PK, when my father became ill, the people that were supported and loved on from him did not reciprocate. There wasn't a culture. He didn't even teach a culture of reciprocation of that space. They enjoyed a certain level of what that was, and when that declined the way that they were used to, a lot were released to go somewhere else and find that space in them that they needed again. And so I say this from a healthy space. I can definitely say it from a scarred place, but I speak today from a healthy space and saying they were supposed to transition. They were supposed to go. You were just supposed to realize that the only one that loves you unconditionally from eternity to eternity is the one you should spend the most authentic space of your time with. When we realize how little people see, when we are no longer here, and it goes into Ecclesiastes, but when we are no longer here, the truth is this. The truth is we're going to have a funeral. We're going to mourn. We're going to grieve, and then we're going to move on. That is the harsh reality. The only one that doesn't move on is the one that's waiting for you to speak to him now. The only one that does not continue on is the one who is anticipating your next moment of prayer. And I think when we realize the truth of that space, it puts everything into perspective. I don't mean to be hard, but Solomon was hard. Solomon was basically like, you think good deeds create, great outcomes for you? Do you think that because you're this way, this is guaranteed to you? And in the truth of that wisdom, the realization of God's love and his abundance for us is so our sanity, our balance. We're only in balance because we don't get a chance. We don't give ourselves a chance to go back to the balancer, who's able to line us back up to the plumb line. So we don't realize how little the other matters. Because truth be told, social media didn't create it. I'll give a little addendum. It illuminated. Because back in Culture Church, where I came from, those same policies, those same practices, where you would walk in, you would have the head covering, and you would be on the certain roles, and you would do the thing, and then you would go home, and your kids wouldn't recognize the person that everybody else saw at church. So that thing really still existed. I think social media has brought life to it.
Right.
And so in that way, I think it is a both a curse and a blessing. But it's definitely a blessing because now we're able to examine ourselves a lot quicker and identify and have opportunity like this podcast to to self-examine and ask the Holy Spirit to really show me who I am so that I can see who you see in me. Show me what I'm trying to be so that you can really define me the way you've always seen me to be. And that's something only Abba can do.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So, if you could sum it up in a sense, what are you most, and I'm going to say proud of, or use the word proud, but what are you most proud of in terms of, your life journey, who you've become, how God has used you, etc.? What is the thing that you are most proud of, or that you are most grateful for to this point in your life?
Um, I think I'm most grateful for God's grace.
Yeah.
God's grace. I'm most grateful for that because I see that in the people that I've affected. I see that in my kids. I see that in where I've been weak. God's taken His hands and been my strength.
Yeah.
And I see the choices that I've made, and the love, the way His love's covered those choices. And so I am most grateful. I don't know if I'm proud of anything, Cher. I don't know if I'm proud of anything because I see everything through um, such a grace filled lens.
Wow.
That when I would hope that um, and then the way my theology is set up, I don't know if I can make this statement, but I'll make it just as a child. It's almost like, okay, I'm gonna back up. It's almost like when we sing songs like I'm chasing after you, and we sing songs like, you know, I'm running, so on and so forth. And theologically, there's a part of me, because I'm a church kid, there's a part of me that says you can't run from somebody who never leaves you, right? And so I find myself juggling that space. But then there's another side of it. That's the side I want to highlight right now. I am, as a father, at times, like a father would in the forest, he'd hide himself so that I can go searching. But I'm never from His presence. He just gives me an opportunity to discover Him again, and I'm grateful for that opportunity to rediscover what's never left me. So it's in that space that I kind of sit in, and I'm just proud. Today's today, and we get to do it another day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I appreciate. Listen, I know for those of you that are listening, that I know I've been blessed and encouraged and empowered, and I know for a fact that you have too. I pray that as you've listened this week to each of our guests, that you have heard their hearts in terms of what living the gospel they sing, you may preach, you may just read, whatever your role and responsibility is in the kingdom of God, that it has to become life for you. And you've got to be able to find that space. And sometimes that is found through trials and through suffering and through pain. And other times it is found through really seeking the face of the Lord and understanding your major dependency on Him and no one else. However it may be, it's important for us to live it out and to not get stuck in the quagmire of how we feel, or not overlook those moments and opportunities for growth. and not be shamed or feel guilty about your life journey and what you've had to go through to become the person that you are, and not try to hide, but to be honest and be transparent. All of those things that we've heard this week, it's important for you to apply that to your life so that God may be glorified, Christ may be exalted, and the people may be empowered by you living the gospel that you believe to be true. And so, Leon, I just want to say thank you so very much for you sharing your heart with us. I appreciate your time, and again, I thank God for the vessel that you are in worship and the life that you live and the journey that God has taken you on to really be a beacon of light in this dark world through your worship. And so I appreciate you so much. I would that you really quick before we end our time together, if you could share with our listeners how they can contact you, your website, your music, what you have up and coming, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. LeonTimboLove.com is my website. Leon Timbo on all social media platforms, LeonTimbo. There's some YouTubes that you may enjoy as well. And, I would love to talk with you. So all my contact information's on there. And share, it was just such an honor to be here on your platform. I admire your ministry and all that you've done and all that you've blessed. And so thank you again for having me on.
You're absolutely welcome. I want to correct one thing, if you don't mind, that he said there's some YouTube videos that you may be blessed by. There is no may. Just go to YouTube. Go to YouTube, cross out the may in the sentence, hit play, and you'll be blessed. That's without a shadow of a doubt. So thank you again so much. I appreciate you, and it's my pleasure to have you on. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you for being such faithful listeners and partners of the podcast. And again, I pray and I believe firmly that you have been blessed by the podcast that we've aired this week. And I look forward to the next episode. And I want you again to share this podcast, any other podcast that we have, with those that are connected with you so that we can be about the business of sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ and this particular platform with others. So God bless you, and we will talk soon during our next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to the CDW Life Nuggets podcast. To get more information, or if you want to hear a repeat broadcast, download the Share D Weekly Ministries mobile app on the App Store and also available on Google Play. Or you can visit shareweekly.org. May God bless you and heaven smile richly upon you. This has been another CDW Life Nuggets podcast. Until we meet again, remember to manifest and maximize life.